Hey, welcome to another episode of Spilling the Beans. I am Tim Bratz. Today I'm sitting down with my buddy Matt Bear, who is an entrepreneur at heart. The dude's been owning businesses since he was in high school and has exited multiple companies, some for 8 figures and north of that. So he's got a lot of good insights on the business side of things, on the marketing side of things, on the passive investing side of things, and on the active investing side of things. So let's go sit down with Matt and get some massive nuggets on how to build wealth. Matt Bear, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good to see you. How are things?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you coming and sitting down. I know, so funny story, Matt and I actually met, well, we met on a boat about 2-3 years ago or whatever, and we were just sitting at like kind of a mastermind at a joint friends kind of marketing event. We're sitting out on his boat and just kind of throwing some ideas around. And I think we got connected like at the end of that or like a couple days later, and you're like, hey man, what's your number? You know, I sold my business, I wanna put some money into real estate. And you put my number into your phone and it popped up that we already knew each other from 10 years prior, and we put the pieces together and we're like, oh my gosh, man. It's fun to see, you know, you see a lot of entrepreneurs who like start their business and they don't have the success right out of the gate and get rich, and they're having all these conversations, they're planting all these seeds. And some of them sprout right away, and many of them could take 10, 12 years, right, to finally, boom, that was a relationship that we started and talked about private lending 12, 13 years ago, and then it just fully culminated a couple years ago. So just kind of cool to see that full circle. And if you don't stay in the business, then guess that seed will never sprout, right? So like you got to stick with it. And the longer you're in the business, the easier it gets, because all of a sudden, a lot of these seeds kind of pop out of the ground, and then you keep on developing those relationships. So I don't know, it's kind of a fun story, but we've been able to stay connected over the past couple years now, and you got a lot of good stuff going on, man. So I'd love to share your story, your entrepreneurial journey with everyone, and then talk a little bit about how you built the business up, how you then kind of decided that you wanted to exit the business, what that process looked like, and then what did it look like, you know, moving forward from there. So, dude, let's start from the top.
So I started my first company actually in high school. I was into racing ATVs and realized there was a need for a product that wasn't really out there. So just started going to machine shops in my local, Indiana town, and built my own product at age 17, just to, like most of us, right? We start our journey because we have a need, and then it turns into a product. And so that was wild, like starting a company as a 17-year-old with $400 to my name. And fortunately, I had super supportive parents that gave me some short-term money on really good rates. But part of that journey was actually when I was 17. My dad's a CPA. And part of my childhood wound was I got QuickBooks for Christmas when I was 17. So when I'm talking to young entrepreneurs, I'm always like, like your parents may or may not support your journey, but at least you won't get QuickBooks for Christmas. Like that's not a real Christmas gift. It was awesome having super supportive parents. Started my first company at 17, sold it literally the day before my college graduation. So that's just, it was an unreal period of time to start a company, grow it through college, sell it the day before my college graduation. Was in the middle of starting another company at the time, which I learned a lot about partnerships and what not to do in that company. But then moved to Charleston and
did you know that you wanted to sell that first business, or that was even an option? Like for me, it was like I just needed to make money, so I never really thought about the exit strategy long term. You know what I mean?
No, at 17 that was not on the radar. No, it was just like I need this product. Let's make it. Oh, other people I'm talking to on the internet. This was like the early days of internet forums. So we were all gathered around this idea of racing ATVs online and just talking in online community, and other people were having the same problem. And just when I solved it for myself, I literally had enough money, I think, to make like 12 units, and was like trading units for PlayStations and remote control cars and like anything to get my product out there. Because like in the early days, people aren't buying it. But I was like, man, if I can just get like 12 people or myself plus 11 on this forum talking about our product, it'll hopefully go from there. Which is why we were just trading it for other stuff I wanted as a 17-year-old. But yeah, I mean, that was really where it started.
And then who came in and made an offer on that? Was it like a real business, like sellable business? Like
yeah,
you had
I mean,
team in place,
we sold it for
manufacturing?
6 figures, and
Really?
like the whole. I mean, it was not a team. Like I'd kind of taken Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week and applied it to that model.
Yeah.
We were selling a product online, so like every 3 months we'd order our inventory,
Yeah.
and then we would warehouse that and then fulfill that, and it was sick margins. We had like a 10x margin on our product.
I love that.
So it was just super, super simple, and literally it was 4 hours a week. It was
I think
just
that's a ballsy move to say, hey, it only cost me this much, but I'm going to price it up here. Like when I didn't have any money, I was like, I'll take any revenue, right? But
yeah.
understanding
I'll trade it
what
for
the
PlayStations.
Exactly, understanding the value that it has, and having the balls to actually ask for this price point,
Yeah.
and then realizing that the market, that gives you like a sense of confidence of,
Yeah.
man, I could take this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people willing, or there's more people willing to pay big money for something like this.
Yeah, well, we didn't start there. We started it at like 5x, which was still good. But then, as we were selling, I was like, I think people will pay more. And we just started raising the price to test the threshold, which is something I still believe in. People are like, what do you think your price is going to be? And I'm like, I don't know till the market tells me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to set a price, but then I'm going to adjust it till the market tells me that the price is right.
Yep.
And I think that's such a huge entrepreneurial lesson. I mean, that's basic economics, but like so many people don't get that right, and I think they undersell their product, whatever it is, whether it's real estate or it's a physical, product you buy online. They get the price too low because they're afraid to charge the right price.
Yeah. Or they'll, I mean, like one of the things that I see is people saying, hey, I'm selling coffee. Well, who's the market? Well, there's 6 billion people on the earth, and they all drink coffee, and so like that's the market. Like that's not the market, right? Like where are you? Who can you actually service? Who can you actually provide service to? And then at the same time, I think what I've seen people do is actually create and sell the idea of a product up front.
Yep.
Not even have the product available yet.
Yeah.
And then once the market tells them that there's a demand for that product, then they go out and create it. I've seen that with coaching platforms and coaching products and stuff a lot of like, hey, let me host a webinar and see how many people are actually willing to pay for this. And then once they have 200 people pay $1,000, they're like, damn, there's like some substance here.
Yeah.
Let me go and then create the product and deliver it in the next like 30 days.
Yeah.
I think that's a really smart way versus creating the product and spending all this time on it and then going and trying to sell it and nobody bites on it.
Yeah.
That's a harder pill to swallow, you know?
Yeah. Or they tell you all the things you did wrong, and then you're reiterating.
Right,
off
then you
the
got to
bat.
redo it.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
That's good. Somebody told me you're getting them on the plane before you take off. Like sell the ticket before you take off with your new product, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's a really smart way to do it if you can. So.
I love it, man. So after college, you sold that, and then what's the next endeavor?
Yeah, so sold that, moved to Charleston, started a marketing agency. Honestly, just played
Didn't take a job. Have you
Didn't
ever had
take
a job?
No, I've never had a job.
Never had a
other
job.
than like the required summer internships to get my degree, which I use so much.
Unemployable.
Yeah, certainly unemployable. Yeah, no, and my father-in-law right before we got married was like, you should really get a job. And I'm like, yeah, I really don't think I should. Like, I get that I'm young and you think I don't know what's happening, but trust me, this is going to work out. I'll work hard enough that I will make sure this works out. Or I'll go get a job if it doesn't. But I've been blessed to never have a job. But yeah, so moved to Charleston, started a marketing agency, and really was just playing golf and doing the beach a lot. It was kind of a lifestyle business the first couple of years, coming off of just selling my other business. And then was like, all right, like, we're going to get serious and like do something. I mean, I was making low 6 figures. So when I say lifestyle business, we weren't just like, I wasn't literally just surfing and skating by.
Yeah.
But it was just like, all right, let's do something. And there was like a moment in time where I had a staff like of 2 people, and I went to Hong Kong for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was like, all right, guys, like, don't call me unless there's an emergency. And I came back and they'd lost half our clients. And I was like, that would have qualified as an emergency that like you should have called me for. But literally like lost half our revenue while I was gone. And I was like, wow, this is not a real business. Like this is just the Matt show at this point with a couple of people helping me. And like said, okay, we're gonna do something really different. So like we didn't change the name, but we changed everything about the company coming off of that trip. I remember just sitting on Shim Creek here in Mount Pleasant, having beers with a mentor of mine, and being like, we're gonna either shut this down and do something totally different, or we're gonna totally change the business. And that was the time we really shifted from just like doing marketing for anybody we met at a coffee shop in Charleston to really focusing on an industry and saying, okay, our favorite clients and the ones we're the most successful for are in hospitality. Like we put heads in beds and that's what we do best. But we only had like one or two of those people. So it was a major shift to say, no, that's all we want to do. And we only had one or two of those clients at the time. But we spent about a year like retooling our product, our messaging, everything to go right after that vertical. And then spent about another year with everybody telling us no. And it's like, oh man, like we really thought we had this. So there was like this 2-year grind there where we weren't doing a whole lot because we were retooling, repivoting, getting a lot of no. But just stuck it out because I believed in what we were doing. I believed in the product. I believed in the results that we were seeing with the people that we were able to work it with. And on the back end of that year of no, and fortunately I had several mentors that said, Matt, like you just have to stay in this industry long enough that they trust you. Like once they know that you're here to stay and they trust you, the answer will go from no to yes. Because the answer is not no because of your product. The answer is no because you're young and you're new.
Because you're new, yeah.
And I was like, oh, and I really like looking back, that advice was critical because it helped me have that fortitude to like, okay, my product's not wrong. I'm not wrong. I just got to build some know, like, and trust.
Well, dude, I think that's a really, really profound principle, right? And the idea of that dude, there's people who want to do business with you, right? They see you, you're a young hustler, you're doing a lot of good things. But dude, I can't take my entire business and put all the marketing in your hands when you've been in business for a year or two. And I don't know if you're going to stick it out because there's a lot of people who start a business and they bail in 12 to 18 to 24 months. And so like they're watching you to make sure that you have the staying power. There's a lot of people who didn't invest with me early on in real estate that then did after 6, 7, 8, 9 years because they saw that I stuck it out. They saw that it wasn't just kind of flash in the pan, get some, make some money quickly and then roll into something else, or it's hard and I'm gonna bail on it. I think that's a really, really important piece for young entrepreneurs to understand and new entrepreneurs to understand is like, the hardest part is the beginning, absolutely, but then it gets easier and easier because then people have a lot more belief in you, their belief system in you, and a lot more confidence in you from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many people bail before they really get there. Like they hit this ceiling, they feel like they're stuck, and instead of just grinding to break through that ceiling, they quit because they're like, oh, I've reached my cap. And like there's been so many moments on that journey where it's like, okay, I've been beating my head against the ceiling for 3 months. What am I doing wrong? And the reality is like, I don't know what changes, but like at some moment in there, you beat your head against the ceiling enough and you break it. And you just blow through to another level. And then you do it all over again, right? You're beating your head against the ceiling 3 years later on a new
levels
ceiling.
Of it, right?
But yeah, stay in the course is so critical because I think so many of us just give up before we're ready for a breakthrough.
Yeah, so you've got the business. You start creating some momentum. You start bringing on all these clients in the hospitality industry, doing a really, really good job, understand that this thing's growing. At what point did it turn from, hey, this is a great income generator for me, it's creating a good lifestyle, to, hey, there's an exit play here. There's an actual strategy where I could take this thing to market, somebody's willing to pay me a big number for it. And what was that process like? I think a lot of entrepreneurs go in saying, hey, I just want to make 6 figures, or I want to make 7 figures, I want to make X number of dollars, and they don't think about what is the long-term play on that. So when did that pivot of saying, hey, I don't need to do this business for the next 40 years of my life, I can actually create it and put the right things in place in order to then make it sellable, and then I can exit it, and then I can go start a new business?
Yeah, I think that was it was an iterative approach, right? So as basically everything is, but coming off of selling one business in college and then transitioning into this business, there were kind of some key moments. One was that day on the creek having beers that we talked about where I said, okay, I got to build a business that's not centered around me. So when I go to Hong Kong for 2 or 3 weeks, it doesn't fall apart.
Right.
Because
you want to do that from a lifestyle perspective, more so you could vacation. Yeah,
I mean, that was certainly...
But that's the catalyst then to also be able to sell it eventually, because you need those same things in place.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point where you go from like a me-centered business to a scalable business to an exitable business, right? I mean, there's that journey you go through as you're like, okay, I'm the entrepreneur, I'm like the solopreneur, to now I have a team, that's running everything, and I'm kind of overseeing it and stepping in and like helping with problems. Yeah. And really then able to get my time where it's the most valuable. But moving from that to like the scalable piece of it, saying like, okay, how do we scale this business? How do we go from like 5 clients to 50 clients to 500 clients, and like what does that look like as we scale through the journey? And you always want to build things bigger than you need them to be, but it's also really hard to do that.
Yep.
Because it's hard to build a system for 500 clients when you have 50, but like that's how you've got to be thinking of, like, otherwise you're just rebuilding everything all the time, and that's really difficult. But like, yeah, so doing that, moving from like, I think that first focus was like, how do we make this a scalable business, a repeatable process? How do we bring the Henry Ford into our assembly line that we're creating for our clients and still deliver with the excellence that we expect out of ourselves and our team? I think a lot of people, they lose that as they scale their business, and it's hard, but you've got to keep that focus on doing both those things.
So what did that look like? Like, who did you have to hire in order to do that? What systems did you have to put in place? What processes did you have to put in place?
Yeah, I'm a big idea guy, not so much a process guy. So I actually brought in, my mentor who I was on the creek with that day, kind of came in as a part-time COO for us to help us get some of those processes and systems in place. Like I love process and system because of the freedom that it brings to people, but I'm also not the best at creating it. And recognizing that, I was like, okay, I need somebody who can build this and like teach our team and then like run with it, and then eventually have somebody who can oversee that to free me up to go do other things. But like that was a key thing, like building some repeatable processes and systems that say, okay, when we do XYZ, our clients are successful. When our clients are successful, we're successful as long as we're doing it in a profitable way that like gives life to our team. And so that was the key, right? I mean, building those processes and systems that let me step out so I could help build the system and say, this is what success looks like. Here are how we measure success in this to make sure that, yes, we're executing it, but we're also getting the result that we want to get. And then from there, we were able to, really scale. And I spent most of my time out shaking hands, speaking at conferences, really trying to like get the brand out there and get in front of people, knowing that my team back home, I mean, I was speaking at 20 conferences a year, so my team back home had to just be on point because like they saw me every other week for 3 days, basically. And it was a hugely challenging time. A lot of people were like, man, the hardest thing I've ever done is raise kids, and we were talking about our kids before this. Hardest thing I've ever done is raise 50 employees.
Yeah.
Like, we got to that point of being at 50, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like, I would go home and had newborns all through that period that we were scaling. We were in Inc. 5000, fastest growing company in America, like 4 years in a row in the midst of all of this growth and everything. And it was a hugely challenging time, but also a really, really rewarding season. And then, deciding you want to exit, right? Which is kind of where that question started. And I think that then there was this other shift of like, okay, I know it's time for me to go. Like I'm becoming the lid of this company, and I'm also, my attention span is not this long. Like it's time for Matt to go work on something new, but how do I make sure our clients are set up for success?
What was the timeline on this? Like from the time you started it to where you were at this point?
That was about 7 years.
Okay.
And I think it was about 2 years too long. Like I think I did my best leadership, but there were 2 seasons I did my best leadership. One I think was from like year 3 to year 5, and then I think my second.
When you were out there selling the business, right?
Yeah.
Selling the brand, selling the opportunity, traveling around. Which, dude, when I think about what should a CEO be doing, dude, it's getting buy-in to the brand. It's really selling the vision, not only to your own company and your own employees, but to the masses of why this is an amazing company to work with and do business with. I think that's a really important piece. And like, when I think about our jobs, I want my job should be making the rest of the team's job easier, kind of a thing. Let me go and create so much brand awareness, which is what you were doing, speaking at all these conferences, that people just like the revenue's not a problem because everybody wants to do business with you, right? People want to come and work for you because of the brand and the culture that you've developed, and you have the right resources, and people want to help you out. Like, I found that like the deal flow is there, the investor flow is there, the operational side of employees and material and supplies and all that other stuff is there. If I'm just out there selling the brand, selling the vision, selling the business, to the masses, it makes everybody else's life easier. And so I do think, I mean, and you have the right awareness. I really respect that about you because you understood. You said this a couple times, like that this wasn't the best fit for me, right? I knew that I wasn't going to be the person said, hey, I want to grow. So a lot of people put that on their own plate. It's like, no, I'm not going to be that person. I need to find the person who can then implement the systems, who can then implement the processes, who can hire the more people in order to continue growing this thing. And you've kind of alluded to that a couple times in your story. You kind of got yourself out of the way and realized this is what I'm really good at, and this is where I should be spending my time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gives you more life too, right? When you're spending your time in the right place, it creates more value, it's more fun, it's all those things. And then you get to that point where you're like, okay, now it's time to move on and do something different. And what I did was I just went out to the market and I said, okay, how are companies like mine being valued, and how do I make mine more valuable? And I spent about 2 years making some strategic changes in our companies to really maximize our value. So when we sold, we didn't get valued, and this for people that aren't in our space, it's harder to understand, but it's the simplest way to put it is like, we didn't get valued as a marketing agency, even though that's what we were, and that's what 80% of our revenue was. We had created a shift to become more of a SaaS company, software as a service.
Which gets a way higher multiple.
And the multiples are way different. And so creating that shift over the period of about 2 to 3 years, one, was the right thing to do for the business, whether we were going to stay in or whether I was going to stay in or not. It was just flat out the right thing to do. But it also shifted our multiple, which when you're exiting, it's all about the multiple.
Because a standard consulting business would get a 3 to 5x multiple, but a SaaS company gets what, somewhere between a 10 to 100x, depending on the size of it.
They can get crazy. So it just totally shifted the game for us from an exit perspective, and let us participate in some things that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to, and that was huge. It was a really huge thing to set up what was next.
Did you go and did somebody kind of consult with you on that? You said, hey, if I want to exit this thing in the next 2 to 3 years, like, what do I need to do? What do I need to implement? Or like, how did you realize what you needed to do, that you did need to pivot it to more of a SaaS company versus a consulting business?
Yeah, no, that was just looking at starting to read other people's content about exiting, right? Like, I was just out there, I was creating a ton of content, as you do. I was reading other people's content. So I was creating a ton of content about what we do in hospitality. I was reading other people's content about exiting and like how those things are happening. And I was reading about SaaS exits, and I was reading about consulting exits, and like, okay, how do we make this shift? And I grew up in a software family. My dad started a software company. So like, I was seeing that shift happening in the software industry, where they went from like, you got software in the mail, right? Like, you used to get QuickBooks in the mail, or you'd go to Staples and buy it or whatever. And then it all became SaaS. And I saw that happen in the software industry, and I was like, man, that just makes a lot more sense. I fought it hard at first. It's like, oh, I hate this from the software industry, but everybody did it. And I was like, well, they did it successfully, so I just tried to start bringing that into what we did, and we saw a ton of pushback in our industry when we started selling websites as a service. And we branded it and created all this, great stuff around it and made a ton of sense, but we still had a ton of pushback. But that was a big start of a shift, where we went from like, hey, we want to sell you a website as part of your marketing deal, to like, now we want to sell you a website as part of an ongoing relationship and software as a service kind of model. And that was really, really big for us. Like, it was big for our clients, and it gave them a much better product that we believe constantly got better, because our dev team was constantly improving our product and pushing those updates out. But it made our business more scalable, made our business more profitable, and made our business more exitable as well.
I mean, that's why all these businesses have gone to more of a recurring subscription type of a platform now, because they'd rather see that in recurring revenue than these big pops every once in a while. Even though the revenue annually could be the same, it's seen as more having more longevity, right? If it's on a subscription side. So you go to exit, you build up the company, you realize, and you're preparing for the exit. And the exit's like this culmination that every entrepreneur wants to get to, right? And like, let me exit. That's the destination that I'm able to finally get to the peak of the mountain. And but you've read it over and over and over again about entrepreneurs who they build this baby up, and then all of a sudden they exit it and they lose their identity, or they don't know what's next. Did you know what was going to be next, or did you go through a phase like that, or like, how were you psychologically once you exited, and then understanding what was going to be next for you?
Yeah, so I've told this story to some entrepreneurship buddies. I have not told this story to my wife, but chances are she won't see this. But So our next, like, we were going to take a year off and we were going to travel. Like, our kids they were going to be, I think, 5 and 3. We were going to be in this great season to travel. We were going to do one of those travel passes and get net jets and just like do it for a year and go see, parts of the world. And then COVID hit. And then like, too many margaritas on the dock and we were pregnant, and it was just like, bam, bam. Like, I was like, well, so that's going to be challenging to travel with COVID and a newborn for a year. And I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. And I was like, well, we could get a nanny. And like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. And so I was staring down the barrel of like becoming a stay-at-home dad, like from going like running 100 miles an hour, flying all over the place, to like stay-at-home dad. And I was like, I got to make sure that doesn't happen. So I went out and bought a mountain. And it was like, my friends were like, what? Like, and I was like, yeah. So, I mean, I knew a couple things. One, I had to transition into something. I didn't want to become a stay-at-home dad. As much as I love my kids, that's not my calling. And I was like, I want to get out from behind the screen. I want to create experiences for people to come, relax, retreat, reconnect. So I decided to start a glamping company, and
which is kind of in line with what you already know.
Very
right?
much.
It's not totally off the wall. It seems like, he went from software and a consulting business into real estate, but majority of that software and consulting service was for the hospitality industry.
It was.
So you're able to kind of pivot into this this difference that's being made in the real estate industry of Airbnb and the rise of VRBO and short-term rentals, and really capitalize on that in a bigger way than what most of these individuals could do.
Yeah, I was able to see the best of the best, right? Like, we were working with the best of the best. Also in that world, when my marketing agency was more successful than I needed it to be, I was funneling a lot of our proceeds into real estate as well. So I was already side hustling real estate, buying stuff in our local community, both Airbnbs, commercial real estate. So I was getting in real estate, and I was looking that I wanted that to be my kind of next thing. And then seeing the best of the best that we were working with from our clients' perspective, and seeing the trend of hospitality moving to glamping, and just loving travel and loving the outdoors. Like, man, if I could, most people either buy a campground or they buy like something in the valley that looks out at beautiful views. And I was like, that's cool and all, but like, if we actually bought a mountain and hung the units like out off the edge of the mountains, so you could just, instead of looking up at the mountains, you're literally surrounded by them. I was like, that would just be next level. And that was really easy to say. It was incredibly difficult to execute. But that was kind of the transition I started to set up. We closed on land end of May 2021, and I was actually kind of working on that, and the company that bought us asked me to stay on for 12 months, and they asked me to extend it for another 3, and I agreed to that as long as I could take some of that time to work on my next. So I literally had 0 gap. Like, I had a negative gap where I was working 2 companies, the one that I had sold and the one I was trying to start and get that off the ground and up and running. And we closed May 2021, and we opened our first 17 units on the mountain in Labor Day weekend 2022, which people told me couldn't be done. I was like, it can be done in probably a year. They told, no, you're looking at 2 to 3, and we did it in whatever that is, 14, 15 months.
I was going to say, man, that's a quick turnaround. That's amazing.
Yeah, we hustled. We grinded like the entrepreneur journey, right?
How were you able to do that so well with supply chain derailment and bottlenecks there, and then obviously the labor force has been all over the place, especially in Western North Carolina, where I own property as well. Yeah. It's hard, man, to get people over there and get them working.
On the phone all the time, just calling people, like, who should I be, like, asking, who should I be talking to, who should be doing this, who's, just, and always trying to like have the next thing lined up. I think that's, people are like, oh, I've got one person doing this job for me, and then they're like, we're good. And I'm like, I got one person doing this job for me. I need to find the guy who's going to replace them when they decide not to show up anymore.
Exactly.
Because that happens
Think a couple steps ahead.
And so that was a big part of it, was like always looking for who's next, like who can replace the guy I have today if he decides he doesn't want to show up, or I decide he's not doing a good job, or whatever. But just always like, and
then it keeps everybody honest.
Hustle.
If there's multiple, people in the mix.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that, not from a moral standpoint that they're replaceable, but from a work ethic standpoint, if you're not on time, you're not on budget, then guess what, man? Like, this is a business that provides for a lot of other people, not just you. Yeah. You got to get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah,
but it keeps them on point and on task if they know that you got somebody coming up the rear, ready to remove them and clear out some real estate in order to bring someone new in. It keeps them motivated,
It does.
Keeps them honest.
Yeah, which is hard to do when the government's handing out free money and everything else is going on.
Yeah, man.
It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. To me, that was, and a lot of that's due to inexperience and the distance I was from my project. The fact that we bought the top of a mountain rather than the bottom of a mountain, a lot of things we could have done differently that would have made it easier. But man, to see, 3 or 4 months later, to hear the guest response to what we've built has been unbelievable. I mean, we've had 300 5-star reviews across the board. People are just over the top about it. Our financial performance has been awesome, but even better than that, experiencing the guests experiencing it. You have these visions for things as an entrepreneur, but when the customer comes in, it was like, man, you nailed it.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay, you hope it's right, you believe it's right, that's your baby. But when other people come in and validate that, it's been a really rewarding experience.
Well, dude, I mean, there's a reason why other people haven't done something like that, because it's so difficult, because there's so many obstacles, there's so many bottlenecks and so many hurdles that are in your way. But you had the vision enough to kind of see through that. We're going to push through it, we're going to muscle through it. And as soon as you get on the other side of that, kind of bringing this thing full circle, all of a sudden it gets a lot easier, because now you got the reviews. Now there's so much demand. Now the city wants you to build more of them because it's bringing so much more business to their community. And but you got to be able to push through the difficult part, right? That first 12, 18, 24 months of being a business owner is hard, man. You're just planting seeds and you're not getting any sort of harvest from it at all until you push through and muscle through all the difficult side of things. So that's awesome, man. So what does the next 24 months look like for you?
Yeah, so we certainly want to expand. We've bought 160 acres. We've got 17 units up there now. We're building more already, and just kind of continue to expand that location. We spent so much money on infrastructure that we can now leverage and make our next units less expensive to build, more profitable, more quickly. Part of me, when I launched this company, I really wanted to have 5 locations in 5 years. Just setting, big, hairy, audacious goals, right? But after doing one and the distance and the toll it takes or has taken on the family, I don't know that is really what we want to do, but we're going to kind of see, we're going to evaluate over the next year. Certainly want to continue to expand my real estate portfolio, maybe do some private equity deals, buy some companies, and help those companies scale and grow. Take them through the journey that we've been through as far as being able to really put repeatable processes and systems in place, and then scale and grow those companies and exit those companies when the right buyer comes along. There's a lot of opportunity. It's the thing as entrepreneurs, right? We see so much opportunity. It's just narrowing that down to what is the right Matt Bear opportunity.
Yep. And how do you quantify that of what do you pursue and what you don't pursue? Because once you reach a certain level of success, now it's not a question of how much opportunity there is. It's more saying no to as many as you can and figuring out what that best one is. Is there a quantifiable process that you go through in order to figure out what the right thing is for Matt Bear?
Yeah, there is, and honestly, I'm in a season where that's shifting, right? I went through that when I was like, okay, I'm exiting my company. I know I want to do something else. What does that look like? I created my criteria, and then found this. It kind of came together in this opportunity, and that was the right thing at that season. Is that the right thing for the next season or not? I don't know, but I'm in a spot now where it's like, okay, I've launched this company. Our customer is loving it. We're financially successful. We're customer successful, which to me is more important, because you get that right, you'll get the financial piece right. But all those are coming together. We have room to grow there, and we're going to keep doing that because it's easier than going and doing something new. But I'm kind of in a season 2 where it's like I'm rebooting that a little bit. And I'm like, okay, we got to step back a little bit and say, okay, these were the things that looked right for me in this last season. I got to redefine my criteria of what looks right for me in this next season, but really saying, what does success look like in this next season? Defining those criteria, which for me is a family exercise, right? That's not something I can do in a vacuum, because with 3 kids and everything, what I've done for the last 15 months has taken a big toll, because of the amount of time I've had to be gone with the newborn and everything, way more than I anticipated. So I've got to reevaluate that criteria for what does success look like for me when you're in a season you don't have to work, but you want to work because you love it. But also, what does success look like for the family? And trying to be gone less. So if I do another location, it's going to have to be done very differently. I'm not going to be the architect, the interior designer, the project manager, and the GC. Probably shouldn't take on all those roles, but you do when you have to in the beginning. So we got to define those criteria and then sit down and look at, okay, how do these opportunities that we're seeing meet against this list of criteria that we've created? And I think that's, it's easy to just go jump and chase after stuff that's shiny and pretty and fast. But as you mature a little bit, you start realizing like, okay, let's slow it down for a season and like, let's look at what this success looks like in this next season. And that's kind of where I'm at again. Now that we're up and running and things are going well, what does this next season look like from a success perspective? And taking some time to figure that out. So I don't know the real answer to that question. I just know I need to take some time and figure that out.
I love it, man. I think you're doing a fantastic job of understanding you, right, and what you really want, and asking the right questions, so that way you're putting yourself on the right path. So got a ton of respect for you, man. I appreciate you coming and sitting down. I'm excited to see how the next 2 years go for you.
It's gonna be fun.
Hope you got a ton of nuggets out of that. Matt is an absolute rock star. If you're not following him on social media, make sure you are. We'll share his contact information in the show notes below. And if you got some value out of this, please share your biggest takeaway in the comment section. I love seeing your takeaways. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the comment section. We'll create some content or respond to those questions and share a video just for you. So appreciate you being here. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, I'll see you on Spilling the Beans.